Hi, everyone. We'll get started in just a minute. So great. I think we can start. We're really excited to see you guys here today. We're really looking forward to kind of diving into what regional rail can do for the city of Chester. If you go to the next slide, Christoph, I'll kind of walk you through the agenda for today. We'll kind of do a quick introduction to the team. We'll go over SEPTA Forward, which is our strategic plan. And it really sets us up to do these kinds of projects. Then I'll dive into Reimagining Regional Rail with a quick presentation, and then we'll go into breakout rooms to really further that discussion. If you go to the next slide, Christoph, I'll start by introducing myself. My name is Claudia Leaf. I'm the Deputy Project Manager for Reimagining Regional Rail on the SEPTA side. The team is made up by myself, Ryan Judge, the Director of Strategic Planning, and Jody Holton, who's our Chief Planning and Strategy Officer. I'm going to walk you through quickly how we're going to do the interactions here. We'll have two methods. It'll be live polling, and then at any point, please, ask any questions, any comments in the chat. And so, yeah, I think we'll have our first live poll now in the next slide. So yeah, it'll just pop up on your screen now. We're asking, which SEPTA services do you use at least once a week? And we would love it if you put whatever those services are, particularly buses and regional rail on the chat.
So far, we have 2 regional rail users, 3 regional rail users once a week.
Awesome.
Let's give it one more minute if anyone else wants to participate.
Not seeing any bus people.
No bus people, no bus riders. All right.
Cool. Wow. Yeah, really this has actually been the most monomodal of all the groups we've been at. So yeah, I mean, interestingly, SEPTA does offer a lot of other services that help you move around the city, help you move around the city of Chester and Philadelphia. So we're going to kind of talk about some of those projects, how we're looking to improve those services through our strategic plan. If you go to the next slide, Christoph. Actually, give me one quick moment, please. I'll plug in my computer. But yeah, so SEPTA is working towards a vision that we outlined in SEPTA 4 of a lifestyle transit network. It's a system, it's a network of frequent all day, all week services that connect people, across the region. So that's what we're working towards with all of these projects. And so like I mentioned, there's 3 projects. If you go to the next slide, the plan sets up 3 projects of significance that touch on all of the modes. So there's Bus Revolution, that's a bus project. There's Reimagining Regional Rail, the Regional Rail project, and there's Project Metro, which is unifying our rail transit network. But all these projects don't just work, in isolation. They are a part of a strategic vision towards a lifestyle network. So they're not working in silos. So the point of all these projects is to make SEPTA more useful for more people. So if you go to the next slide and then the next slide, Christoph, I'll kind of talk to you about those 3 projects I talked about. So Project Metro is looking to improve the system and make it more useful for more people by unifying the Market Frankfurt line, the Broad Street line, the Norristown High Speed line, and all the trolleys into a single easy to use network. And we're using maps, signage, and new communications to really reinforce that connection and make it easier for people to navigate. So the goal there is really to make these vital lines accessible and easy to use, no matter who you are or how well you know SEPTA. You can go to planning.septa.org to learn about this project and also all the other projects. But yeah, free to move the next slide. So buses carry nearly half of all SEPTA riders. So buses are really the backbone of bus riders are really the backbone of our system. Bus Revolution is responding to changing commutes. Basically, post-pandemic, the world has changed. And we're acknowledging that the backbone of the system are workers and people who don't work traditional hours and who need the bus to do a lot more than just go to their 9 to 5. Bus Revolution is going to be redesigning the network to match those changing travel patterns and to simplify bus routes so that the system is more easily legible. It'll increase operational efficiency and effectiveness by making them faster and more reliable. So you can learn more at septabusrevolution.com. They're in a similar place as Reimagining Regional Rail, where they are, entering phase 3, which is, really defining what that service is going to look like. So there's a lot of opportunities for engagement there. So if you go to the next slide, something we really heard a lot in our outreach that we've done and our outreach that really set up SEPTA forward was that our systems could be better integrated. And so it's really important that we think about these projects cohesively, like I mentioned, so that SEPTA can really work as one. So one of the places where we really heard integration was hard fought was regional rail. And if you go to the next slide, I'll tell you a little bit about what regional rail is doing. So regional rail is going to be creating a vision for the future of regional rail and what that looks like by identifying infrastructure, equipment, operations, policies, and all those kinds of things that we need to identify and change to get to that lifestyle network. The system right now is, if you go to the next slide, the system right now really connects suburban areas to parts of Philadelphia and Center City. Mostly it's really focused on that 9 to 5 commute movement. And that is something that, works really well for a lot of people. If you go to the next slide, it's something that works really well for a lot of riders. 132,000 people used to rode before the pandemic, but it doesn't really work for everyone. If you go to the next slide, trips from the city of Chester to Center City are 30 minutes on regional rail, but regional rail doesn't serve as many trips as it could. People are, often taking the bus to 69th Street and then taking the MFL in because it's more affordable, even though it's a little slower. So I think the way SEPTA sees this is that this is really an opportunity to make the most of our services and make sure that everyone can use them so that they're using SEPTA because it's the best choice for them. So Reimagining Regional Rail, like I mentioned, is going to address the issues of inequity and not really maximizing what we could head on by putting everything on the table. The whole purpose is to serve more people and integrate regional rail with the rest of SEPTA. So to do this, we're not just working internally, but with a team of experts, and I'll let them introduce themselves now. So yeah.
Yes, I'm Christoph Spieler with Hewitt Zollers, and I am the project manager for the consulting team that is doing this project with SEPTA. And we also have some of our other team members here today. We have Adija from Nelson Nygaard, who you will hear from in a moment. And we have Roseanne, her entire team from Connect the Dots, who are doing public outreach for us and running this meeting today. So we figured it was good to start with talking a little bit about what regional rail is today. I know a lot of you already ride it, so you already know this, but part of the things we're trying to do with this project is reach some of those people who don't. So regional rail offers direct one-seat connections to Center City and other destinations like the airport, University City, and Temple University. If you look at Chester, trains run to Center City every 20 to 40 minutes at morning rush hour, about every 2 hours in the middle of the day, evening and weekends, from around 6 a.m. to midnight. This is a very peak focused, rush hour focused system today. On the way, they stop in places like Prospect Park, Sharon Hill, and Darby, about 28 minutes from Chester to Center City. And then the train stops near the Fashion District, near City Hall, and at 30th Street Amtrak Station. Most of those trains make every stop along the way, but some rush hour trains run express for faster service. We'll notice, though, that also makes the service a little more confusing. It's a less predictable service than a lot of the other SEPTA services. The trains have more seats than subway or L trains, which means that most riders can sit down, but there's also less room for bikes and wheelchairs. And at many stations, riders have to walk up steps to get on the train. Chester, for example, is not a fully accessible station. And you can pay by tapping a SEPTA key card at the station or by paying a conductor who also checks your key card on board. And it costs about $5.75 to ride to Center City from Chester, or $7 if you pay cash. So if you do that comparison, you realize that regional rail actually offers a much faster travel time than a lot of other modes. If you compare getting to City Hall, about 70 minutes if you take the bus to the MFL, only about 32 minutes on regional rail, and that's a direct trip as opposed to having to transfer. However, in the middle of the day, that bus is running every 20 minutes, whereas regional rail runs only every 2 hours. And regional rail costs nearly 3 times as much as the bus does. In this case, both are wheelchair accessible. But like I noted, the regional rail is wheelchair accessible only at one door with a mini high platform. And so most of the riders do actually have to go up steps to get on the train. So this is where we are today, but this project is about seeing what regional rail could be in the future. And with that, I'm going to pass it to Adisha to talk about that.
Hi. So there are 3 goals that are focused on, there are 3 goals that we worked with, and they're focused on the rider experience and the vision for how we would like regional rail to serve people. The first is to increase and improve access to opportunity, prioritize an intuitive rider experience through a seamless welcoming system, and finally, create a reliable, predictable regional rail system that people can trust. Can you go to the next slide, please? With those 3 goals, 3 scenarios were built for how regional rail could adapt and serve more people. The first is regional coverage, which would provide 30-minute all-day service everywhere. The second is metro frequency, which would introduce a high-frequency SEPTA metro style service where demand is highest in the region. And the third is all-day speed, which introduces all-day express service and better integration with Amtrak. Next slide, please. So in Chester, with regional coverage, which would be the 30-minute all-day service, there would be trains every 30 minutes to Center City and every 30 minutes to Newark. And at rush hour, there would be express trains to Center City. Next slide, please. In scenario 2, metro frequency, there would be trains to Center City every 15 minutes from Chester, and every 60 minutes to Newark from Chester. And again, at rush hour, there would be express service to Center City. Next slide, please. And then finally, in scenario 3, all day speed, there would be 60-minute service or trains every hour to Center City from Chester, as well as express trains to Center City all day, and they would also go out to Trenton. Next slide, please. So the kinds of things that would change with regional, or that could change with regional rail, are frequency and span of service, which is essentially the extent to or how long the train operates, the types of service, whether it's local and express, the relationship SEPTA has with Amtrak and New Jersey Transit, local transit connections, infrastructure upgrades, station improvements, equipment, fares, fare policy, operations and staffing, whether or not lines are extended or if there are new stations, as well as the business model. Next slide.
So this project is about setting a long-term ambitious vision for what regional rail can be. So we're purposefully looking into the future. We're asking what does this system need to be to really be more useful to more people. But we also know that when we put forth that vision, it'll take a while to get there. This may be a several decade vision to actually get to the full build out of this. But we want to make people's lives better in the short term as well. So in this project, we'll also be looking at what improvements can we make now and what improvements can we make in the next 10 years so that people can really see a difference in the service. So right now we can do schedule changes within existing infrastructure. There's definitely large parts of the system where we could run some more midday frequency if we have the crews to do that. We can also look at fare policies because SEPTA Key is used on both regional rail and other SEPTA modes. There's a lot more opportunity to integrate fares between them. And SEPTA has a lot of regional rail infrastructure projects that are already in process. We have a chance to make sure those projects are designed for the future vision as those projects are put in place. In the medium term, then, we can really start talking about infrastructure and rolling out this system line by line, building the infrastructure that allows better service. And with that also goes new equipment. We have an opportunity here to really change what the equipment is like because the large part of the fleet dates back from the 1970s and badly needs to be replaced. So this is both a long-term vision and an immediate implementation project. And to think through what that might look like, we've created some scenarios and some proposals for change. So imagine a regional rail system that's easier to understand, that's easier to access, that is better connected to other SEPTA modes, that is more reliable, and that ultimately serves this region in a completely different way. So what we want to do now is actually dig into this in detail. And with that, I will stop sharing screen and hand this over to Roseanne. So this is our chance to hear from you. And what we want to start with right now is which one of you, who of you currently ride regional rail, who doesn't, and why or why not? So start by telling us where you live, then tell us whether you ride or not and why you do or why you don't. And I'm going to just go down the list of people I see here and start with James Turner.
Before we jump right in, I want to just say, I know that I saw a couple of questions in the chat and we are going to address some of the things that you're asking. So I want to make sure that we have a chance to hear from everyone. And then we will talk about handicap accessibility and we'll talk about the Highland Avenue station as well. Sorry, go ahead. Mr. Turner, I recognize you from the Economic Development Plan.
Hey, how you doing? Good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you.
So your question is, do I ride regional rail? Yes. And why? Because it is convenient for me to get into Center City and not deal with all the crazy parking for the meetings that I have to get to. So
excellent. Next on my screen is Francis.
Hi. I do ride regional rail and I ride it a couple of times a week to get into the office. The reason I like riding regional rail is because it's convenient, as James pointed out, and also that it's easier. You don't have to deal with the traffic or the crazy traffic on the Schuylkill Expressway, and you don't have to worry about the cost of parking, which can be quite expensive.
Excellent. Next, I think we have Daryl.
Yes, good evening. Yes, when I go to Center City, I would use the rail system. Same reason as the prior two people said, it's easier to get around in Center City. You don't have to worry about parking.
Excellent. How about Eric? Eric, are you there?
Eric, we can't hear you. Oh, there you go.
Okay, I think we'll keep going, but Eric, if you are there, feel free to send us a chat. Then I also see Tim McDermott.
Yep. Hello. How are you?
Good.
Good. I'm actually switching over to my. Let me do this if I may.
Okay, let me mute you and come back to you. So
Yeah. Yeah. You got it.
A lot of echo.
how about Peter? Do we have
Hello.
Peter? There you go.
Hello.
Hello, we can hear you.
Yes. I don't ride SEPTA. I have to go to a meeting every month, well, twice a month in Center City from Chester, but I don't use SEPTA because the schedule doesn't coincide with when I have to be in Center City, and it's easier for me to drive because it takes me 20 minutes to get there, and I have to worry about the stops. The parking is inconvenient, but because of the time schedule, riding the train is not convenient.
So thank you for telling us that. How about Nicole?
Yes, I catch the regional rails, but like Peter, sometimes the scheduling is not conducive. And also I have a handicapped godson that we are not able to access the Chester station because of the lack of handicap accessibility.
We've heard that a lot, that that if you are in a wheelchair, the system's a whole lot harder to navigate than if you are, the whole parts of the system are off limits to you. How about Antoinette, if I'm pronouncing that correctly?
You are correct. Thank you. And yes, I do take the train, particularly when I have to go into Center City. But I'm also mindful of my schedule when I'm there for my meetings, because if I know that the meetings are going to go too late, then I don't, because of the train schedules. And from time to time when I've had to, I live in Yaden, and when I've had to, my car was in the shop, I've taken the train to the Chester office. So, because I can take it to Swarthmore and then jump on the bus and go right there.
Thank you. How about Roland?
Hello, everyone. How you doing? Yeah, so I actually ride the regional rail as well. I'm actually right here at the regional rail because I own a restaurant that's a couple of feet away from the Chester exit. I mean, with the Chester station, and I take it from home to work sometime if I might have left my car here. So at least probably like once or twice a week that I definitely use the railway to get to and from work.
Excellent. And finally, Tim.
Oh, I had on mute. Appreciate being on the call. Appreciate you guys doing this. So I'm the president of the Philadelphia Union. So we're very interested in kind of what you guys are thinking and doing, and love to be a collaboration, or love to collaborate in terms of what might transpire. Both from the standpoint of helping the residents of Chester and providing more access and accessibility for them, and at the same time, understanding that it helps obviously to have a great transit system to bring people down to Chester to our games. And from what we've heard from other people, developers, that would be a great benefit for anybody looking to develop or create companies in the Chester region. So definitely like to hear what you guys are thinking.
Excellent. Yeah, so let's dive into what we're actually thinking. So there's some things that we are thinking we want to change about the system no matter what. And those will start with how the schedules actually work. We're thinking that it makes sense for every local train to stop at every station, just like it does on something like the subway, Today, we have some trains which skip some stations on some trips, which means, in fact, there's even some stations which have less service during rush hour than during the rest of the day. We think that's awfully confusing for new riders and even for people who ride at different times every day. We also are thinking that the express patterns become much more standard so that every express train stops at the same stations. And that the train schedules are standardized, so the train leaves at the same time every hour and you can remember the schedule. We're thinking there's improved wayfinding at the station so you don't get lost on your way in or your way out. And we think that all stations need to be accessible. In fact, looking at high floor platforms so that it's much easier to get on and off the train, and full accessibility all the way from the station out to the street. And much better connections to bikeways and to sidewalks so that people can get to the stations more easily. We're also looking at better connections to other SEPTA transit, looking at more opportunities to connect frequent bus routes to regional rail stations. Chester is actually one of those really useful bus connections. We already have a transportation center that's immediately at the station, and we think there's a lot of bus riders, like Claudia said, who would benefit from those connections. And this is why doing a bus network redesign and a rail network redesign at the same time is really helpful. We're also looking at new connections between regional rail and SEPTA Metro, so that there's more opportunities to connect those systems together in places like Radnor and North Philadelphia, and looking at some trolley line extensions to meet regional rail stations. We want to integrate fares more, so that, for example, we could do transfers between modes where if you ride the bus and then transfer to regional rail, the cost of your bus fare is credited towards your regional rail fare. And even looking at a larger zone in which regional rail fares match bus fares. We're looking at new trains. Like I said, we need them, and they'll make the system more reliable. And also track upgrades, which make service more predictable and more reliable and avoid delays. So thinking about that list, how do you like these changes? Are there any changes you wish we were including here that we're not?
And because I'm realizing we have a very representative group here. I see members of the Planning Commission, we have someone from a major sports team. You don't have to think just about you. You can be representative of your respective constituencies if you would want to talk about how you think these changes would affect you, and the industries and places that you represent. So is there anything that you think that we're missing, or do you think that there are things that are particularly helpful in this for you and your organizations?
Well, I mean, I think there's a couple things for, this is Jim Turner, that, and maybe you're going to address them later on, but there are some definite challenges with the Chester, the two of the main stations that are in Chester. The first is, as people have already mentioned, the handicap accessibility. The Highlands Station, which at one point we were going to do a whole TOD that never really took place with SEPTA, but that station being redone so that it both meets the needs of the soccer team and the people who want to come in, as well as just the regular riders. Because if you've ever stood on that platform, it is like taking your life in your hands. So that definitely needs to be addressed. And then the other thing is that for me, that, and this is just, again, one of those right now type things, that station has been reopened since the mid-90s or something like that. And the basic thing of concessions, of just being able to get a cup of coffee while you're waiting on the platform, or a bagel or whatever, is never been put in place. It's in the station, but we've never put that in place. And so it's the only place where you can't, access those types of amenities for a full transportation center. And that's what it is. It's a transportation center, and yet those amenities are not there for the people that are in the community. So those in and of themselves would be an immediate help to the folks that are in the city of Chester.
If I can add to what Jim just said, great points. And I don't know if you guys have given much thought to the location. I think at one point, might have been the county and others had discussed the idea of putting a train station or maybe moving the train station from Highland to whether it be off of Flower or off of Engle. I'm not sure, if that's still something under consideration. But I felt like it was maybe the county or other members of, Chester who had, kind of brought that forth as an idea, which, given our location, we would certainly love something like that. I'll also just say this, when I think about the train stations, like, a train station in Chester should not, in my opinion, should not feel different than a train station in Radnor.
Right.
And that's what happens right now, right? And that is not fair, and that is not, equal to what I see in other places. And there should be a feeling that station is of high quality. And that to me, I don't think exists today, and that's not fair.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that, because it's one of the main transportation hubs in the county, and it is not on par at
That's
all.
right. That's right.
Yeah. No, I think we've definitely seen that in our own time on the system, that the quality of the stations varies dramatically. And you definitely get some sense of SEPTA and even the private railroads before it in terms of where the investment was focused and which riders were valued in making those decisions.
Yeah, and the other piece, I think, again, this is a simple fix, is just something as simple as lighting. And at one point there was, you had SEPTA police there, and that station has been shut down for ages. And so what happens then, because there's no, the lighting is not correct and things like that, it becomes a hangout for folks that are homeless and other folks. And so when you're getting off the train at night, it is not necessarily the nicest experience that goes with that. And a lot of that would be taken care of just simply by changing the lighting and also changing the security that's around the space.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I think that we definitely hear that. I know internally at SEPTA, we've been working on thinking about how to address those issues specifically at Chester. So there's definitely work being done about that. And then we're looking at consolidating as part of this project phase 3, as we kind of take all the information we're hearing from you guys today, from the last almost year of engagement that we've been doing around this topic. We'll be looking at, whether we'll be extending lines, consolidating stations, adding new stations. So that's all in the works, and it's coming, and it'll be part of this project, whether that's Highlands Station or any other number of projects.
Okay, this is Daryl Jones. I'd like to chime in as a member of CETA. We would like possibly to move that Highland Avenue station maybe to like Engle Street. I think it would be a better location. Both stations have been neglected, and I don't know if we can wait another 5 or 10 years for improvements. We've been neglected for decades, so we need to upgrade. If Chester's going to become a tourist spot, we need to upgrade definitely from Highland Avenue to another location. Thank you.
Thank you.
I would like to say also about the Chester station. I think as it is now, the station closes at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So you don't actually have access to purchasing tickets. You don't have access to using the ticket kiosk to purchase your ticket. So anyone who's leaving Chester after 2 p.m. going to Center City gets penalized because they have to pay the extra fare when they get on the train because the ticket office isn't open. I mean, that should be looked at also.
And one of the things that when we look at other systems around the world and around the country, it's typical on new commuter rail systems that every single station has a ticket vending machine, which makes it a whole lot easier to use for new riders. So that's definitely the kind of thing that we're looking at here. So I actually want to move on and talk about some of our specific scenarios. Because there's different ways we could run this service. And we'll start with what we call scenario number one, which is regional coverage. We've heard a lot from people about off-peak frequency. We've definitely heard it here today. And so this is saying, what would it look like if we had service every 30 minutes on the entire network all day? So a train every 30 minutes from early in the morning to past midnight. Those trains stop at every stop, and that means you have a reasonably timed train whenever you want to travel. In addition to that, we would operate express service at rush hour. So all of these scenarios really represent different ways to spend roughly the same operating dollars. And if we go to scenario two, we see a very different focus. Scenario two is saying, what if we really focus on frequent service in the heart of the system? And so that instead of running 30-minute service everywhere, we run 15-minute service in the places where we see the highest demand, and then run less frequent hourly or 30-minute service elsewhere. In scenario one, there's only one line that has that kind of 15-minute service, which is Glenside to Penn Medicine. In scenario two, we do it on a lot of lines all over the system. So you'll see that frequent service up to Glenside, you'll see it out to Chestnut Hill East, you'll see it out to Norristown, you'll see it out to Radnor on the Paoli-Thorndale line. You'll see it out to the end of the line at the brand new Wawa station on the Media Elwyn line. You'll see it to the airport, and you will see it to Chester. So the idea here is 15-minute all-day service is the kind of service where you really don't even have to look at a schedule. You can just go to the station and know there'll be a trip along soon. And this is actually the scenario that we're seeing the highest potential ridership increase with. And then we also have scenario three, which is focusing on speed. Right now, we have express trains, which can save you up to 20 minutes when you're traveling at rush hour, but those express trains run only at rush hour and only in rush direction. So we're saying, what would it look like if we ran express service all day? And we could do that by actually integrating with Amtrak. So what you're seeing here is express service out to Lansdale, out to West Trenton, on the Trenton line, on the Paoli-Thorndale line, and on the Wilmington-Newark line. And what we would do here is integrate tickets and service with Amtrak so that the same ticket would work on something like a Keystone train or an Amtrak regional train as it does on SEPTA, and provide 30-minute two-way all-day express service. We're showing Chester as one of the possible stops on that service. What we found, though, is it doesn't actually get us the same kind of ridership increase that frequent service does, though it does reduce vehicle miles traveled regionally because it takes a lot of the long-distance commuters and incentivizes them to take regional rail. So what we're going to end up doing is taking these three scenarios and combining them into one that represents the future master plan. So what we're trying to hear from you is, which of these do you think serve the region the best? Which of these do you think serve Chester the best? What do you like or what do you dislike about these scenarios? Thoughts?
So I like scenario two. And the reason for is actually one that we have not mentioned, and that is that, as we talk about the workforce and workforce development and helping, especially helping folks who don't have cars to get where jobs and things like that are, having a more frequent service that does not hinder them as far as them getting to work and things like that, and being able to get to more places makes a big difference. And then the other piece is I would love to have Amtrak stop in Chester. We've been working on that for like 50 years now. So that would be a awesome thing to have happen. And from a ridership standpoint, one of the things that from the standpoint of when I talk with businesses from Delaware County, is that it's much easier to take a train into Chester and get let off there than to go into Philadelphia or into Wilmington to take the train to, either Washington or whatever. So literally all the folks spend Media, Swarthmore, Havertown and whatnot would all, I think, migrate to Chester in order to be able to do that if that was an option.
Yeah. And I'll note, obviously, scenario 3 is not within SEPTA's power to implement, but we're definitely looking at partnerships here, and we intentionally looked at some opportunities that that may require other agencies to help, but that could make the whole system better. And yeah, I mean, if you look at it, there's a pretty big gap in Amtrak stations between Philadelphia and Delaware that Chester's right in the middle of. Other thoughts?
Ms. Whittington, I see you've unmuted. Did you want to say something?
Yeah, I think scenario 2 might be feasible, but also thinking about if you run the more frequency of trains on a more frequent schedule, that it might be easier for those who may have to not only take the regional rails to get to work, and may have to connect with the bus or trolley. If you have more frequent trains running, that might coordinate better with the schedules for those other modes of transportation, public transportation.
Yeah, no, and there would be a real opportunity to, I think, have more bus to regional rail connections. I think there's also, I think, a lot more likely that people would ride trains to destinations that aren't center city because of the ability to make those transfers.
Or anywhere along the way.
Exactly.
Tim, do you think that there's a scenario that would best serve your staff or your fans in this, or do you think they all have like benefits? And
Yeah, well, so at the Philadelphia Union, we also own and operate the power plant that's there. So there's about 1,200 employees, not all Philadelphia Union employees, right? But there's about 12, 13 tenants that are there. And so we're the landlord, if you want to think of it that way. And so, as you might expect, right, providing the opportunity for employees to be able to get to work through mass transit such as this would be fantastic. I think I don't know exactly where everybody resides and lives, but the idea of getting people from, I would think, at least the center city area down to the Chester region, and then being able to have a quick walk to the power plant is fantastic. From a fan perspective, from a game perspective, yeah, this would be a huge opportunity. I think a huge boon for us to be able to say, from a fan perspective, you can now get to Subaru Park, regardless of where you're kind of originating from, but certainly from the standpoint of those who live in the kind of the center city, Philadelphia area, we hear this all the time, that there's really not an easy way to get to our stadium. So I think it's probably fair to say we lose a lot of fans or a lot of audience because we don't have a super easy way to get to our stadium. And, I think the other piece is, there's a lot of the 25 to 35 age group that might live in the center city area that may not have a car, quite frankly, right? So they're relying on some form of mass transit. And our numbers have dwindled over the years of folks that are taking transits or stopping at the Chester Transit Center. And then, we bus them over, and that the numbers that we get through that are just, they continue to dwindle. It's really, clunky, right? It's a lot of, it's a long transit. It's a long commute, so to speak, to go to a game, to do all that. And And then, to do it at night, where some people may not feel that, there's an off. Yeah, I think the cutoff is a certain time too, right? Where the last train goes. And so if you miss that, you're kind of stuck. So, the more that we can provide more access for people coming and going at those times would be fantastic. It's, ideally it would be relatively close to the stadium, wherever the, train station is. What else? Yeah, I think that's where my head is on.
So one more thing, and that's in regards to this, with what is in relation to the soccer stadium, the Philadelphia region is going to get the FILA games in 2026. And so I'm sure that there will be some things that will be taking place at Subaru Park as a part of all the things that will be going on. And so
that's right.
So if we don't address this now, the amount of revenue both for SEPTA, Chester, Subaru Park, and the region will be greatly hampered, because people are coming from everywhere, and if they can't get back around easily, that's going to be a deficit for us.
Yeah, that's a great point. So yes, 2026, Philadelphia was awarded the World Cup as one of the host cities. And so Chester itself and Subaru Park will be a training site. So there's 3, potentially 4 training sites, and we, meaning Subaru Park, will definitely be one of those sites. So great point.
Yeah, no, and I think what you were saying about schedules is a really good example on how this is sort of a center city centric system. That if you are on the weekend and you're riding outbound from Center City, you can leave Center City as late as 10:40, which gets you into Wilmington like 11:30. But if you're riding the other way and you're riding from Chester to Center City, the last train is at 9:30, which is a major difference. And you can see how that whole schedule is really designed for people to go from Chester to Center City, with Philadelphia being the destination, rather than seeing Chester itself as a destination.
Yeah, right now, what's the last time it departs?
On Saturday, Sunday service, the last train headed into Center City from Chester is 9:36. On weekdays, I'm looking at it live as we're talking about it right here. On weekdays, that last train is 10:36.
Yeah, and so our games start at 7:30. So our game isn't even over till 9:30. It's really impossible for you to wait for the game to be done. Get the bus over to, it doesn't mathematically work, right? So that means you're basically gonna have to leave well before the game is over. So yeah.
So you can only enjoy blowouts if you ride regional.
Yeah. But look, I as much as I want to be a proponent of this for the Philadelphia Union, I don't want that to. There's a lot of other needs, quite frankly. The community of Chester, the residents of Chester, and as much as I, which is true, the truth of the matter is there's, I think we shouldn't be the reason why something like this would, come to fruition. I think there's a lot of other, people that should be higher in the kind of pecking order, quite frankly. I will say, just because we're working on a project that would be adjacent to Subaru Park, one of the things that I've really thought through a lot recently is from a standpoint of economic development and providing companies kind of incentives to do business in Chester, which helps obviously from a job perspective and job creation perspective. I think having mass transit is a big piece of that, and being able to get as a company that may consider locating in Chester, it's critically important that they can get their employee base to and from their jobs. So I think there's a pretty significant economic, positive economic story for Chester if we can improve the overall mass transit system.
Ms. Trueheart, I see that you've been unmuted for a little while. Did you want to jump in?
So yeah, just wanted to add to scenario number 2 is what makes the most sense to me. But along with that, we have to address the safety issues and the safety concerns there, particularly if you're talking about increasing ridership, more trains, that's more activity that's going to be at the train station. But I also see, as far as going along with economic development, if we were to include creating kiosks within the train station where we could have the businesses in Chester that could set up, that sell foods and coffees and other things that people will stop and buy when they're going in and out of the train station. And that also.
Oh, you muted yourself.
I'm sorry, I had a call come over at the same time, so.
That's okay.
But yeah, I'm not sure if you heard me when I said about, I think we should include incorporating kiosk space within the station, so we could then have quite a lot of our, businesses that are in Chester would be able to utilize that and then sell the items that people want as they're traveling to the train station.
Peter or I'm sorry, Daryl or Daryl, I'm not sure how to say it. I haven't heard you say your name. Did either of you have a scenario that worked best for you? Nicole, a couple of new people have joined us as well. Adelaide, Carol, Roland. Is there a scenario that works best for you? That you think works best for Chester?
For me, I agree with, this is Nicole, Jim, and the other people who've had the opportunity to speak. Definitely the frequency, but I still have to keep that whole handicap and handicap accessibility issue, because it's not just seniors that are in wheelchairs, it's not just wheelchairs, it's total. If we're talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion, we are excluding a whole group of residents that need to be able to access center city. We travel to the airport as residents as well. Definitely this the safety. I know at certain stations there are also charging stations that are available for residents as well. So I like riding a regional rail because I can actually plug up my phone. It may sound silly, but for me it definitely makes a difference. So in terms of residents wise, I just think that it shouldn't take 5 or 10 years to do something to make this station accessible for people who have all different types of disabilities. And lastly, marketing. I know that SEPTA does a lot of marketing in Philadelphia for schools and for businesses. It would be really nice for for Chester to be able to participate in some of the marketing campaigns on the regional rails or within the stations as well.
I noticed some comments in the chat about security at the station and the transportation hub. And we've definitely heard that comment. We've heard that comment elsewhere. So just wanted to say you are heard on that count. And one of the things I think that we'll be looking at as part of this plan is sort of essentially what the minimum level of features at every station ought to be, including things like security.
Christoph, there's been a pretty big push to put more cameras throughout Chester, and something I would suggest you speak to the various folks who are involved in that project, whether it be at the mayor level or the police level. But I think my understanding is it's been fairly successful in putting more of the cameras throughout Chester, and it's something that we're looking at doing ourselves. So just something to consider. I'm sure you might have some level of, video surveillance or whatever, but something to think about.
No, and I think I know Claudia's taking notes. I think that's something we can also pass on to the specific people at SEPTA who work on the security. Well, I know we are close to the end of our time here. So anybody have any thoughts you haven't gotten out yet?
I'm sorry, can you repeat your question?
Oh, I was just asking if anybody had any last thoughts before we close out the meeting. Wanted to make sure we gotten to everybody.
One last thing for me, because of broadband issues, there are a population of residents that, it is kind of like a broadband desert going on. Will it be an opportunity for residents to, voice their concerns or provide feedback at another date? Will it be some type of face-to-face meeting in addition to Zoom?
We have done in-person outreach of various kinds. We're actually more or less at the end of this round of outreach. But I know we are starting to plan out what that looks like for the next round later this year. I don't know, Roseanne, if you want to add anything there.
We were really hoping to make this a hybrid event and have an in-person component. Unfortunately, we didn't have a good location where we could do that. But it was our intention for this event. There will also be some in-person outreach, like he said, at the end as well. And we'll make sure that event gets shared with you so that people can come and see what the final recommendations are going to be for regional rail moving forward.
And in fact, if you look at the backgrounds behind Claudia and Roseanne, they both have backgrounds that are actually picturing the in-person outreach we did at Chester earlier this year, where we actually had our entire team on the ground with a cart, with information, with snacks, talking to riders, not just at the rail station, but at the bus stops all around the station. And we actually got some incredibly useful feedback, which has shaped these plans. A lot of the reason you see that red line go all the way out to Chester in scenario 2 is because of what we heard from people in that round of outreach.
And like Claudia said at the beginning, this is not the only process that SEPTA is pursuing right now. There will also be some outreach for Bus Revolution in the fall, and I'll make sure that we have some of the regional rail updates there as well. If you think that would be valuable for people, we can make sure that there's like a flyer or something letting them know that this is also happening at those events. And I know that there will be in person as well.
Sounds good. And people are asking about videos being available. We've actually posted the information from our first public meeting in this round, which actually includes more detailed information than we went through in this meeting. And we have a lot of detailed information available at regionalrailplan.com. So I encourage all of you to go there and learn more about this process. There is also a survey there. And if you have not filled out that survey, please fill out that survey. We are in the final weeks of this outreach round, and we very much want to hear from you on regional rail. We also have coming up next week what we call a transit talk. It'll be a virtual meeting digging a little more into some of the technical background behind this. And so we welcome you next Tuesday, and please get out the word to anybody else you think might be interested in this process, both about that Tuesday meeting and about our website. With that, Claudia, do you have any last words from SEPTA?
Yeah, thanks everyone so much for coming. You guys brought some really great, points, some really salient ones that really have that can have really quick, effects and changes. So thank you so much for that. Like Christoph mentioned, you can go to regionalrailplan.com to learn more. You can use planning.septa.org to learn about our other projects and get involved. And yeah, just thank you so much for coming tonight.
I have also put an email address in the chat as well for follow-up if you would want to reach out to SEPTA directly. Sorry, Carol, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to know, I think when Adelaide asked the question about the video being shared, I didn't really quite catch what he said. It sounded like he said it will be or in the near future. Is that true?
There is a video of there's a video of a meeting that we've already held on the website that actually went into more detail than we were able to go into tonight. So we recommend watching that video that's already posted.
And what areas did that cover though? Even if it was more in detail?
I'm sorry, I couldn't understand what
What-
you said. Can you say that
Like
again?
what areas? Because I wanted to hear particularly, I was a little late, not a little, I was pretty much late in this meeting. So I kind of wanted to catch up with everything that was discussed and everyone's input so I can then be able to send out any further questions I may have directly to you guys based off of what you guys pretty much bring up in this particular meeting. But you said that the other video had more details, but I didn't know if that was surrounding, you know, the same area that you got, I'm assuming you guys covered today, like
Yeah.
regional areas around here.
So I'm gonna drop a YouTube link. Oop, sorry. I'm gonna drop a YouTube link in this chat that just started out open. Where you can see, we went through all of the scenarios for all of the different areas and talked about
Okay.
it. And then if you go on the website, you can kind of go through how the different scenarios work. There's also a really quick and easy 5-question quiz that will match you with the scenario that suits your needs and your preferences best. Based off of the trade-offs and what those scenarios are really good at. So I definitely recommend going to the website.
Yeah, and this video will be up. It
Thank
just,
you.
it won't be out in a short, in a super short timeline. So that's why we're kind of pushing these other materials.
I got you. Thank you.
Well, thank you, everyone. And with that, we will be ending this meeting. We appreciate all of your time and all of your input. And this will definitely show up in that final plan. We appreciate hearing from you.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.